And the episodes keep on coming. Welcome to season 2, episode number 17. I'm Nick Powles. I'm going to bring Charles and Nicole in. This is really episode 1974. Hopefully, to the audience of like 12 that keep watching these, we're making tremendous impact. Just kidding. On our YouTube channel, if you want to backtrack and see all of the content we've developed, it's all on the YouTube channel. And we when we kicked this thing off with COVID, we had keynote speakers, and now we've pivoted slightly to now bring specifics, whether it's a Z or a ZOR or the broker, into our conversation. So today I want to bring in Mike Halpern. Mike, thank you so much for spending some time with us. This is a Meet the Broker, but this guy, he knows franchise sales, he knows franchisors, he's got the broker side. So Mike, I would love for you to frame kind of your story a little bit and then just state of what you're seeing and what's the temperature on how franchising is behaving right now.
Yeah. Hey, Nick, thanks so much for having me. Charles, thanks for having me as well. I'm very happy to be participating in this great forum. I've been in the franchise development business for 20 years. It's really hard to believe. I started my career just after the dot-com bust in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I am in the midst of kind of a resurgence of interest in my career because I've spent almost the full 20 years representing franchise systems and helping them make the conversion from an independent business to become a franchisor and recruit those first couple franchisees. So I know what it's like to take a really exciting business model and go through the whole process of working like groups like Charles's group on the legal side to help them create the FDD and create a really user-friendly platform for new franchisees to join and go through training and support and ongoing operations. So the majority of my career has been spent on that side of the fence. And this year I made my own pivot and started focusing on consulting and becoming a broker. So I'm taking all my experience working with franchisors, and now my new client base are individuals, partnerships, and groups that are interested in owning their own business in the franchise space. So that's really exciting for me because a lot of my work has been with emerging and startup concepts, and now I have this broad portfolio with my connection with FranServe, and there's over 500 concepts. So I'm really starting to build relationships with different franchise systems and trying to find the best ones so that my clients get into concepts that are exciting for them, but also low risk from an investment standpoint.
Like there's a ton of experience in what you do. Just generally, so I'm in a world right now where I've decided a month ago, I've ignored COVID and all these other things that are going on. Probably not the right decision or whatnot, but for the moment, I'm focusing on the positivity and what's ahead.
Sure.
I'm focusing on the opportunity that, we've all realized maybe everything needs to change and we shouldn't be wasting time. I mean, as you focus forward with your experience in franchising, franchise development, what do you see as the pathway ahead and the opportunity ahead, whether for emerging brands, established brands? What do you see as the opportunity?
That's a great question. I think they have to stick to the fundamentals of what they know, but also have the ability to be flexible and understand that COVID does have an impact on business. And I've seen brands that have increased their revenues and increased their franchisee acquisitions and have grown their business. And I've seen concepts that have really been impacted in a negative way. I've had a lot of experience in food service, and clearly a lot of the restaurant brands, particularly in the full serve casual dining space, it's really hard for them to, recreate the sales volumes they're accustomed to when they're operating with, an arm and two legs kind of tied behind their backs. So they pivot and work on the delivery model and the curbside pickup and those type of things. But, there are brands that are just going to have to evolve and change the way that they knew how to do business. Even when we have a vaccine and the virus isn't top of mind on every single day, the behavior patterns have somewhat shifted, and there's going to be kind of a brave new world ahead. So It is a different landscape, but I do think that there are great opportunities in franchising available, whether they're home-based or they are retail. Because as we all know, the landlord markets, at least domestically, have been very strong for a while, and now it's more of a tenant-friendly environment. So I'm not discouraging my clients from looking at food service brands and other retail concepts, because I think there's a great leasing opportunity ahead for those that get in at the right time and have an opportunity to sign, 10-year lease with a couple of options and get in at what I would consider to be a below market, occupancy cost. So I think that, everyone's got a different opinion of what's right for them. And my job as a consultant, instead of just, pushing one concept, is to really, I'm in the intake business and listen and really acquire as much information as I can about my clients, and then try to put them in front of opportunities that make sense. And this is a lesson I actually learned. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the Five Guys burger concept. That's one that I got involved with very early in my career, in my early 20s. And I learned a couple lessons from that brand. I had a contract on my desk to be the very first Five Guys franchisee. And what got me so excited about it was only a 4-unit chain in Northern Virginia. I had not heard about it until I moved to the area. And I went on a snowboarding trip with all my college buddies, and I'm in, a resort, and a friend of mine started talking to me about Five Guys. I said, "How do you know this brand? You're in Colorado. It's a little 4-store concept in the DC market." And he just told me how great the product was, et cetera. So I knew that there was something there besides the fact that I thought their product was great. Long story short, I put together a small group of investors, a family member and that family member's friend. And we were right at the finish line on the opportunity to secure a 3-unit territory in really the backyard of what is Ground Zero and in the heart of the Five Guys system. And it fell apart at the very end because the spouses of my potential partners were not brought into the conversation until the very end. They had real fears that were substantial about signing a lease and taking on some obligations that could potentially be problematic. And, I watched the deal unravel, and I thought to myself, wow, maybe this is a sign that this particular time and this brand doesn't make sense. And as we all know, it became a very successful concept. And if I turn back the clock, what I would have done differently, and I educate my clients about this, is really get everybody involved in this process as you're thinking about buying a business, whether it's your spouse or any business partner and their spouse or any influential decision maker. Is so important to keep the glue together on a deal and keep that communication going. So I thought that was interesting. And secondly, what I learned going through it myself and, in the process of trying to become a franchisee, is those signs are real, even if they sound kind of superstitious. When you have something that becomes a challenge and you decide not to pursue something, that might end your journey of trying to become an entrepreneur. So those signs are real. So what I have done with that information is, I try to put the right brands in front of my clients. I try to be very transparent and tell them about, I could be operating 35 Guys units now, but I'm not because of some mistakes that I made. And I've learned from those mistakes and I can pass those along to my clients. So that was a key takeaway I learned as a consultant to really help my clients navigate through the scary process of the idea of getting into their own business.
This theme of the family around the purchase, family support continues to come up. And what I find fascinating is how much due diligence franchisees are encouraged to do and how little the franchisor is encouraged to do. Because the reality is, if franchisors were given a playbook on how to perform due diligence on that franchisee, then they're also reference checking and they're saying, let me talk to your spouse. Let me talk to your parents. Let me talk to anybody who you might be pulling one penny from on, do they validate this decision that you're having? Now, the reason it probably doesn't happen is because franchisors have been conditioned to sell. So they don't want anything to slow down in the process. But if you take great brands, the reality is they really nail the first 10 franchisees. Those each over time, call them 5-unit or 10-unit franchisees. So there's 50 units in the first 10 franchisees if you do it the right way. But again, we're conditioned the wrong way. So we come and we sell, we oversell. We're trying to get people to write the checks. The checks need to go to the brokers. We've been teased by private equity. So the point is, from now you've gone through it as a franchisee to potentially become a part of a Five Guys, which, by the way, 1984, 85 is when it was founded. So it's not like it was an overnight success. It wasn't
Absolutely.
like magically they became the leader in the category.
Sure.
But now that you've seen it and you've seen it in all these areas, do you wish that franchisors were more diligent about who they said yes to too? And do you wish that maybe they would have pressed at that time to say, let me talk to the wives of the people involved before we even get to yes?
Yeah, you bring up a great question, Nick. I think a lot of franchisors have a lot of work to do in that regard, which is to focus on who they're going to be in business with. Because once that check clears and the franchise agreement's signed, there's a marriage there, and you want to make sure that you're in it for the right reasons. And specifically naming one that does a great job, which, as we all know, is not necessarily a traditional franchise, is Chick-fil-A. I went through their process as well, because I think it's important to show my clients that I've been on their side of the equation evaluating brands. And I thought Chick-fil-A did the best job of all the concepts I've worked with in my 20-year career of really vetting me as a potential franchise owner. And I made it to the second round of interviews, and they were pretty transparent. And they said, based on what I had told them about my existing franchising business, they wanted someone that was going to be completely dedicated to operating their concept. And I was looking at it more of a opportunity to put the right people in place and help manage the business. And that's not what Chick-fil-A looks for. But they had a very thorough, detailed vetting process that really impressed me as a potential buyer. I don't love the business model from a franchising standpoint because there's no real exit strategy. But it is a great opportunity to make great cash flow operating the unit, but it's really more of a job than it is a franchising concept. So yeah, I do think that when I, talk to different brands, I have a great deal of respect for the ones that really ask the right questions, and their meet the team days are very mutual, where they really want to discover who the person is that they're potentially getting into business with. And I think that's a really valuable asset for a franchise system, is to really get the right people. Because if you don't, the house of cards will eventually crumble, and that's what no one likes to see, is the part of franchising where units close and there's contraction and there's legal issues and things like that. And that happens in franchising, but it tends not to when you do the right thing up front and get the right people matched with the right brands. And there's no perfect way to do it, but I think, the more time the franchisor does spend really evaluating who they're going to be in business with and really coming up with a set of criteria so they know who their target audience is. And yeah, they might deviate from that when they find someone that's special and is a really good fit for their concept. But I do think that, it's more of a one-way street where, like you said, it's, they want to get deals done. And you really, as a consultant, I need to really educate my buyer that let's make sure that they're, performing their due diligence on you as well. So they're not just accepting you just because you have a pulse and a check.
Mike, it's not like that comes up often. Nick actually brings it up often when talking about franchise sales, and focus franchisors should have is about authenticity in the franchise sales process, the buying process. And what's great about hearing your story and how you relate to your franchisee candidates, there's authenticity there. I mean, you're sharing, your real life experiences, and it's really a testament to you and other really well qualified franchise brokers and consultants out there. For the franchise brands, Mike, like the authenticity that you just shared, and certainly you're a firewall in front of many of your clients. What are some authenticity factors you're looking for from the franchisors that really gets your attention, or maybe turns you off and says, this is not something I'm going to show?
That's a good question. I mean, I think the first thing I do when I look in the back end of the portfolio is I really try to avoid concepts that are just so new that they don't have a proven track record. Because my clients, they come in all shapes and sizes. Some come to me and say, look, I want a ground floor opportunity, something brand new. something that doesn't have a brand name that I can capture a good swath of territory and build a multi-unit business. And I have others that are the polar opposite, and they want something with a household name that's mature, that has a proven track record. And I've spent the majority of my career with the former, with brands that are under 50 units that are still trying to make a name for themselves in different parts of the country, predominantly in the food space. So I tend to lean towards brands that are a little bit more mature because I just want to make sure that my clients, they're my bosses. You know, I don't have a boss anymore like I used to. Even though I was self-employed, my franchisor brands, they're my boss, which is great. I had a great working relationship with them. I've worked with some really phenomenal concepts. But now I treat each client as my boss for their particular engagement with me. And I want to make sure that I'm showing them something that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I don't say, whoops, we made a mistake on that one. And sorry, you invested 300 grand and it got flushed down the toilet. I can't control how a business operates, but I can control, you know, really filtering out concepts that to me just put up a red flag. So maybe that's, they have too few units. They have too few units in that part of the country. And I will encourage I don't give my clients a roadmap on exactly what questions they need to ask to validate with franchisees of that system, but I do want them to come up with a list of their concerns and figure out how did people that are in the system overcome those concerns and have they been successful? And even if they have, you know, there's definitely always challenges and opportunities. Any business has its challenges. So let's identify what those are and see if my clients are prepared to cope with those and handle those. And if not, then we cross that one off the list and move on. So I think like most consultants, I really want to whittle down 3 or 4 good opportunities and have the, you know, be nimble and be able to kind of say, okay, these 3 aren't great. Let's focus on this other segment. So I think for me, this has been really fun because instead of just becoming really an expert on one brand, I'm more of a generalist, but I know exactly what to look for. So I put my 20 years of understanding item 7s and item 19s and looking at the list of franchisees that have left the system and ones that are in the system and really help my clients do all their homework. So by the time they sign, they're fully ready to go and they understand the challenges ahead. And, you know, it gives me more peace of mind when I put my head on my pillow that I've done everything I can to get the right candidate with the right brand and really make a match that's going to be lasting and impactful. And, you know, hopefully they'll all become great franchisees that can tell their stories when prospective franchisees call them, you know, 2-3 years from now.
Mike, as we make the final turn, the question that I want to end with is, and I'm fixated on this. So I've asked this multiple times, but I don't know that I've gotten to the answer that I want yet. So I'm going to ask you in hopes of we're taking steps to get there. The back of the franchise broker baseball card. These stats. What stats do you want on there? Do you want total revenue brought in to franchisor when you place that franchisee? Do you want like your wins and losses? Like a win is someone that was a successful franchisee that scaled within that brand. Do you want no closures? Like for you as a broker, on the back of your broker baseball card, what data do you want on there? What would make you super proud, say 5 years or 10 years from now, that says, man, I'm having an all-star Gold Glove type career?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. I think, you know, in terms of a stat, it's kind of hard to quantify, but I want my clients to say, I really enjoyed the experience working alongside Mike and Franchise Freeway because he didn't push me into a brand. He listened, he really understood what we wanted, and he helped us make the right decision for our family. I do think working on the retail side, a lot of the big feather in your cap is no closures or few closures. And I would apply that same kind of philosophy towards my clients. I would like them to stay in business, and their exit strategy isn't a fire sale. It's the fact that they were able to generate income, cash flowing in operating their business, but also have a nice liquidity event when they exit and sell their business. So I'd like for them to say it was a great experience learning about franchising, and Mike listened. And on top of that, these are people that once they get in the system have a great deal of success and are happy with the decision that they made.
Mike, appreciate that answer. I highly doubt any of our baseball cards will ever be worth anything, but it's still a really good answer because the industry should respect the fact that we're even having these conversations. So,
Absolutely.
Mike, on behalf of Charles and Nicola, thank you so much for the time that you've given us, and look forward to seeing what happens in the next 6 months to a year as we regain some of the strength that we had pre-COVID. So, Mike, thanks for the
Charles,
time.
thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it, and hope you guys take care and stay safe.
You too.
Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.